You're listening to the B-Town Breakdown, where we talk about life, art, local news, and all that jazz with your host, Alia Sinclair. Tune in for a new show every Friday at 106.5 KQWZ LP-FM, South King County.
Hello, and welcome to this week's show of the B-Town Breakdown, where we talk about life, art, and all that jazz. I'm your host, Alia Sinclair, and today we're going to kick off with a segment I call Food for Thought. As the year settles into new routines and day-to-day comings and goings, it's all too easy for the things you most wish to create to get lost. If enough time passes in the banality of everyday living, you can start to feel like you've forgotten how to express yourself at all. I'm reminded of a talk I had a few years ago at a cafe in San Francisco. I was sitting with the woman who would become my wife, and we were talking about art. My wife is a wonderful watercolorist and loves to paint objects and landscapes, capturing the seemingly mundane props of our lives with a talented knack for color matching and transmuting objects on paper. But she was feeling distressed about the value of her art. And her distress was coming from the fact that she didn't feel as if her art said anything, that it wasn't art with meaning. What does my art say? She wondered aloud as I sipped my coffee and her eyes grew sadder. Painting a bottle of steak sauce doesn't mean anything. It's a thought and feeling nearly every artist has at some point in their creative lives. What does my art mean? What's the message? Is there a message? Does it have any power? Why am I doing this? Is there any sense in creating this thing? These are big questions that every artist must ultimately answer for themselves, but I'll tell you what I told my wife that night in San Francisco. If you create from your own internal catalyst, your art will always be art with meaning. That might sound trite, but it isn't. It's a tried and true method of creating, and in my opinion, the only way to create. I asked my wife to think about her internal experiences. What do they feel like? What is it like to exist as her every day? What does the world look like through her eyes? And if she had to turn those feelings, thoughts, and experiences into paintings, what might they look like? What geometric shape would they take? What colors would they contain? How big would the pieces be? How detailed? At first, there was some resistance. But often all I feel inside is a gray box, she protested. Then draw a gray box, I said. Draw scores of gray boxes. Draw them in landscapes and garbage cans stacked on top of one another. Create as many shades of gray as you can and fill your boxes with them. Create 3D boxes, 2D boxes, people with boxes for heads, boxes falling out of the sky, boxes at the ocean, the cinema, the dinner table. As I went on, her eyes started lighting up as her mind spun with the possibilities. This was an internal inspiration. Her internal experiences were starting to spur ideas of a whole series of paintings based on her inner landscape, on how she is able to see the world. And the best part, she suddenly had an artistic commentary on her experience with depression without even trying. She didn't set out to create art with a message at the beginning of our meal. But in doing a little delving to find what aspect of her inner truth she could explore, we came upon an authentic and unique way of expressing her reality that has the potential to speak to many, many people who have had similar experiences. If you want to create art with power, with the ability to stop people in their tracks and cause them to think, start with mindfulness, with your own inner reflection. Let the voice of your own internal soundtrack come alive and create art from your fountain of truth.
You're listening to the B-Town Breakdown, where we talk about life, art, local news, and all that jazz with your host, Alia Sinclair, at 106.5 KQWZ LP-FM, South King County.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Alia Sinclair, and you're listening to the B-Town Breakdown, where we talk about life, art, and all that jazz. Today I'm here with local artist and curator Amber Raven. Hello, and thanks for being here.
Hello, and thank you for having me here.
So I'd love to start with you giving us some background on your work with art and the community.
All right. I've been an artist ever since I can remember. I can't remember a time in my life where I wasn't drawing or coloring or making posters or putting on plays. And so it's just always been something that I've done natively. So as part of my philosophy about community service and, giving back to the community, it just is a natural. It's very natural that I just use art as my way to give back to the community or to be part of the community.
Are there specific things you're working on now as a curator or with the community, certain organizations?
Yes, before the pandemic lockdown happened, I was really active with the B-Town Beat Art Walk. And I was working with my partners and the rest of the group of the B-Town Beat to get musicians out every first Friday of the month, just playing music in front of restaurants and local businesses.
Oh, nice.
And when lockdown happened, that was no longer something that we were able to do.
Yeah.
So I had to be creative with getting art to the community while still maintaining the safety protocols that were in place at the time. So we decided to do a call for artists for a zine. Basically, a zine is short for magazine, and it's just a collection, basically black and white on white, black ink on white paper. Super simple. And I got 13, I think it was around 13 different artists that submitted their work. And we were able to get a 24-page booklet printed, probably like 150 copies of them, and gave them out to different venues that were still open. So people could take them or like leave them randomly at a coffee shop or, like places that were still accepting customers.
Yeah.
So that was a way that we were able to use our grant from the city to continue to get art out to the public in a different, like more creative way than having musicians play. But
Yeah.
anyways, that was like my big thing before pandemic lockdown. So I just kind of been skating on that concept since then.
Yeah.
And working on these, like curating zines and putting together like stickers or posters.
Are zines something, where can people get them? Are they still in coffee shops? And
I think the ones that I did in 2020, I don't think there's any more of those. Those were part of the original B-Town Beat, and I think they've all been handed out.
Yeah, that would make sense. But if
there's some cool stuff in there. If you can find any copies of those, there may be some copies at Scarlet Ibis Gallery.
Okay.
I think they may have some copies still. And
Great.
I think they recently moved from Berrien to the Georgetown area. So,
Great. What is your creative philosophy, either yourself as an artist or things that prompt you to create or things that you're looking for as a curator?
Art philosophy.
How you approach creativity, maybe, is a better way.
Creativity is just like a native part of
Who
my
you are.
experience and who I am. I'm always looking for like ways to create or to add to, or if I go into a space, I look at, the potential of a curation for an art show or like, exhibit or sculptures or something. This thing would look great here. Or this place is missing zines, for example, looking for that space to fill.
Do you find, trying to figure out how to say what I mean to form the question, is the motivation from an aesthetic point of view of like this space needs this kind of thing, or is it prompted from a more desire to spread the love, like the world needs this thing?
Honestly, I know this sounds cheesy, but I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Just as a curator, I'm naturally looking to curate spaces when I go into them.
Yeah.
But I also think that art should be available for everybody to experience.
Yeah.
And, my partners and I practice something called radical art distribution.
And I love that.
It's the ability to, like, bring art to a place that doesn't necessarily have art for no other reason than just bringing it to the space.
Yeah, having it exist.
It should be easy for businesses to be hospitable to show art. It shouldn't be a problem for businesses to have to host art.
Yeah.
And that's part of something that my partners and I have really pushed is it should be seamless. Like artists should know that there's a place for them to show their art. And businesses should know that artists know what to do. And that's kind of like...
Have you met with much resistance in that work?
No.
Good.
No.
Good.
I think that most businesses, they want to be involved. Like for the art walk work, for example, businesses really wanted to be involved but didn't know how.
Yeah.
Like, what can we do to be part of the art walk?
That education.
And, helping to educate businesses to be hospitable, to host art
Yes.
was one of the things that my partner and I really pushed.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be difficult.
Yeah.
It's just as easy as an artist knowing that there's a space and knowing when they can hang their stuff. That's
Yeah.
it. I mean, and businesses knowing that an artist knows what the heck they're doing and not
Right.
just going to come in and put a bunch of holes in their wall.
Right. Yeah. I think that the need for that go-between is often huge because lots of people at least give lip service to wanting to promote the arts or help the arts, but don't know how. They don't know how to even get started. So that's very important work, and I think it's something unique about you. Because you're talking about how this kind of curational eye and feeling is an innate part of you, but it's not for every artist. I think that's a special thing you have to be able to view a space or to even have an eye for how to build a collection or a zine or have an eye for other pieces of art. So I know it's kind of hard when something is so innate because it's like fish in water. But if you could talk about that, what that experience is like for you, and dig in a little bit to what it is to be a curator, at least in your experience, for those of us who might not have that innately.
One of the main things that I've kind of learned is that it's like a perfect storm of a bunch of different things. The experience of being a business owner, which I have before, the experience of being an artist, which I am, and the experience of like being on the municipal page, which I have done before. I've been on the art commission before, and like all of those three things have very different motivators. Finding the commonality between all of them to make it kind of seamless is what I've enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
One of the things, like for example, knowing what kind of clients come into a business.
Yes.
You want to have art that's maybe not representational, but something that's interesting to the clients that are coming into the business.
Right.
You can tend to push and introduce new things to a certain set of people, or like a certain demographic or something like that. But, there's a fine line. Because sometimes it can just like scare people.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so scary. I hate art. I never want to see it again. It doesn't have to be like that. You can experience different things that you wouldn't normally see, without being scared.
Yeah. I think there's something too about expectation. Like if you're going to get a cup of coffee, you're not expecting to see something jarring. Whereas if you go to a gallery show, you're a little more mentally prepared for that.
Yes, I agree.
That makes sense.
That's very well put.
And it's kind of I have a background in marketing, and it's kind of marketing 101 is finding your demographic. I saw something just the other day that said, the Stanley cup, the insulated cup, was meant for blue collar, working class men was the demographic they were going for. And then a woman reviewed one, and it went viral, and suddenly the female market opened up, and the CEO was like, let's market to women now. And it's exploded.
That's
absolutely.
Half of your customer base.
Exactly.
Right there.
So it's being able to pivot like that. Like you think this is the demographic and this is the demographic that's going to want this. And it might be something else completely different. And so have you ever had to pivot like that when you curated something for a specific viewer in mind and had to pivot?
No, because I don't really believe in censorship. Like a lot of the times if there's something on that line, I'll let the artist know this is a possibility for how this could be received. Do you want to hang it?
Yeah, the difference between art and marketing.
Yeah. But they're very much hand in hand.
Yeah, very much.
Art sells, baby. Everybody wants to.
It is a business.
Be in the cool art scene, but in order to have a flourishing and healthy art scene, you need to be tolerant and allow it to exist.
And open, like willing to interact with things that might be uncomfortable for a second, to open up your worldview and your little bubble, which we all have.
Right? Yeah, and some things are really spooky. I do a lot of costume characters for like showing up for events and just like we call them costume goons or background extras.
Oh, nice.
And I have costumes that go from like storybook characters, Little Red Riding Hood, to, you know, really scary, like spooky stuff like devils, you know, things that people are really afraid of.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because people equate that to who I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's really interesting. I'm not a devil.
Right.
I'm not an angel. I'm not a devil. I'm an artist, and
I'm an artist.
do all these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that brings up an interesting point, though, because there's been a lot in the last, as a cultural conversation in the last several years about can you and should you separate the artist from their work, specifically
Right.
people who become problematic and got, you know, canceled, as they say. And so people wonder, you know, what do I do with this work now? This book, this movie, or this art, and the difference between an artist and their work. Do you have any thoughts about that? Like, as an artist yourself, what you create versus who you are. And it's odd because they're intrinsically linked and they're also very different. Like you said, I'm not Little Red Riding Hood or a devil or any, you know, I'm an art, I'm a person expressing other modes of being.
Right.
And yet it comes from us,
somewhere.
or it comes from somewhere as
You
artists.
know?
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh man, peeling back those onion layers.
Yeah, it's
That's
a big question. I
yeah,
know.
it is. No.
Okay. It's something I've really been grappling with, and I think a lot of people are grappling with, as a, like I said, as a societal conversation. And there are no easy answers.
There aren't. You know, the only thing that I can say is that I have literally had somebody come into my house who, up until they had seen the art that I have in my house, they were very friendly. And then after that, nope.
Ooh, yeah.
They won't even look at me.
It's very interesting.
They won't speak to me. And in fact, you know, mutual people that we have known no longer speak to me because they were so affected by my costumes.
Your costumes. Yeah. Wow. That's very interesting because we've talked about the things that can cause fear or those reactions in the viewer. But I think off of this topic, it can also happen to the artist. I think, you know, in my experience, like I've been prompted to create something that scares me, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this is going beyond what I am comfortable with, and yet I feel compelled. Has that happened to you? Do you have experience with
Yeah,
that?
like climate change, for example.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk about climate change.
Right.
Everyone just is like, oh yeah, it's so nice and warm. Ooh. You know, but like, I've lived here all my life.
Yeah.
And 65 in December is fucked up.
It's very odd.
And, you know, I did a call for art for What Scares You.
Oh, I love that.
And
prompt.
they were all climate change.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I didn't even know where I was going with that. But working with scary things and talking about scary topics, I mean, that's more scary to me than somebody who's wearing a devil costume.
Right.
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. It's
I don't know.
it's coming for us all. It's been so wet and warm that at my house we've had a mosquito problem. In December, it's like as soon as we open the doors, this cloud of mosquitoes. I'm like, what is this? It's Christmas time. Should not be happening. Well,
Yeah.
that's a lot of
Talking about scary stuff.
let's talk about scary stuff, mosquitoes. Yes, indeed. Well, what are your, because we talked some about the challenges here, but what are some of the triumphs you've experienced as a creative or a curator, or things you're just really proud of having done or accomplished?
I'm going to deflect, and I'm saying I'm really proud of my husband for being able to allow me to be philanthropic, to be an artist, to support artists and musicians through my work and what I do.
Yeah.
I couldn't do any of this without his support. So, yeah. Dennis rocks.
Dennis rocks.
Dennis rocks.
You've heard it
And then,
here. The B-Town Breakdown.
Yeah.
How can, speaking of supporting artists, how would you encourage the community to support artists and the art scene? What's some of the things they
buy
could
art.
do? Buy art.
Tip musicians. When you see people playing music on the street, tip them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out there hustling and doing their thing.
Yeah.
Support artists. Allow them to be there. Like, invite somebody to your like if you own a coffee shop, invite somebody to your coffee shop to do in plein air or whatever, live painting, or just having it being around and being there for people to see.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I would say to support the arts. If you want to support the arts, just allow it to exist.
Allow it to exist. And
Be tolerant of, you might not like this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I see plenty of art that I don't like, but there's doesn't mean that it shouldn't be there.
right.
As
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned.
And just
But-
because art is free to consume doesn't mean that it is free. An
Yeah.
artist has a lifetime of having
it comes
perfected
from so many
their
different
art.
places. Sometimes art can come really just right from your soul, and it's very visceral and it's very like personal. Or sometimes it's just like me. I paint memes. I just do memes when I need to or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not like anything personal reflection of my heart or who I am.
Yeah.
But it's what people are into right now.
Yeah.
So it's just a reflection of what people are checking out in the memosphere.
In the memosphere.
Yeah.
We talked a little before we turned the mics on about your call to the local Burien community for art. You want to talk a little bit about
I
that?
would love to talk about it. I'm so excited. I got a grant from the city of Burien to produce a zine. They're looking for a 28-page, 32-page zine of black and white ink, line drawings, games, mazes, poetry, haikus, stanzas, whatever, anything that's inspired by Burien. And so I'm doing a call for content to put together, to curate the zine based on people's, love of their town, to celebrate living in Burien, the good things about Burien. So yeah, it's all like, I've done this before, like we mentioned before, pandemic, when the lockdown happened. So this is kind of just like a follow-up of that. But
Great.
more like intentional.
And where can people send their work?
My email address is on the Call to Arts flyer. It's amberraven@gmail.com. And yeah, I'm accepting black and white line art. It's to be printed on white paper. Mazes, word finds, crossword puzzles, definitely poetry. A lot of times when people do call for arts, the literary world is often overlooked. So I would like to definitely include the literary world in the scene. And hopefully it'll be out in May, and I'll be just bringing it around to coffee shops and restaurants and other places where people like to hang out and look at stuff.
Lovely. Is there a deadline for people to get work to you?
Yeah, end of April.
End of April?
End of April, I would say, yeah.
So if you are interested in submitting your work, you can send it in to Amber at Amber, that's AMBER, Raven, at gmail.com by the end of April to be included in this zine, hopefully.
There is a stipend from the city of Burien. That was part of my grant narrative.
Even more
Because
exciting.
part of my philosophy is getting artists paid for what
Yes.
they do. So there is a stipend available for everything that's accepted for the zine.
That is always very exciting for any sort of artistic project.
Heck yeah.
Yes. A pay artist. Hashtag pay artist.
Indeed.
No-
And then, so I do have one other thing
Yes,
I'm working on.
by all means.
This is very exciting. My partners and I recently joined an art group collective in Georgetown called Equinox. I don't know if Raymond mentioned that.
No.
Part of it's an art collective, and we got a studio in this amazing group of artists. And one of the opportunities that I've recently been given through them is to curate an entire house.
Wow.
The house is slated to be torn down at the end of 24. So
Oh, that's cool.
I'm totally inspired by like Meow Wolf
Uh-huh.
and places like that. This is totally immersive, completely everywhere, art everywhere. It's an entire house. So
That is cool.
we're gonna do. We'll probably have a big music festival, and we're if anybody's interested in doing like some big installation piece, that's also something I'm looking for. If
All
people are
right.
interested. It's
Get-
gonna be fun.
Get in touch with Raven if
Yeah,
you have
get in touch with
anything
me
for
if
that.
you want.
Or sorry,
It's
Amber.
gonna be scary.
Yes.
So be prepared.
Be prepared for devils of all kinds.
Gosh, I swear.
Well, that's very exciting.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
You had mentioned before the pandemic the musicians doing
Yeah.
musicians. Is that something that's
Yeah.
coming back at any point in the future?
In Burien, I'm not sure. I'm not involved with the art walk in Burien anymore.
Oh, okay.
That was kind of, the pandemic kind of severed that one.
Threw things for a loop.
And, as we all try and build back society and build back ourselves, it's a little different
Yeah.
coming back into it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's like after any sort of big experience, traumatic experience on any level, but we're experiencing it globally.
right.
And we're
on
in this
huge global
period
social
of
level, it's
Yeah.
it's a trip.
it's like collectively walking through the 5 stages of grief, only not linearly because grief never is,
Yeah.
but trying to figure out who are we, what do we do, what do we value,
Where are we going to go from here?
where we're going to go from here in the art world and everywhere else. So it's an experiment.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting watching how people buy art,
Mm.
what people are buying.
Has that changed
I would
post-pandemic?
say that it has.
Yeah.
My observation is that people are more intentional about what they want to do, whether it's produce art or purchase art.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, the festival scene, like street kind of festival. People are slower to come into tents. And I noticed that we're more people on the outskirts watching rather than wanting to be engaged.
Engaged, yeah.
People
That's
want to be
interesting.
engaged on their own terms.
Yeah.
And not just like solicited to right out the door.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. It reminds me of the first time I realized how something big culturally can affect art. I was walking through museums. I was in my early 20s, but realizing that a lot of the abstract art, like surrealism and absurdism and abstract art at all, was coming after like the Great War, and people were just like, or World War II. And the art just reflected chaos.
Oh my God!
You know, it was less color. It was browns and grays and blacks, and just
I think
splashed and like
Stanislav Biskinsky, I think.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce it.
the Russian. Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah, and I was
he's-
like, oh, this makes sense. It suddenly clicked. Like, of course, this is what they're expressing at this time in history. How could you kind of paint anything else? And you see the recovery of humanity in the art through the eyes of the art. And I had never done that. And I think we're going to see that or are seeing that now post-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard, they're a band, for example. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. They're amazing. Their philosophy is that the planet's dying and they're going to make as much music on their way out. They kind of they produced, I want to say, 5 records last year.
Wow.
Like that.
Wow, in 1 year?
Yeah.
That's
It's
very
knockout.
prolific.
Anyway, their music's amazing, but that kind of I look at that as kind of a healing thing, like a statement on what's going on. Like that's the way they're doing it.
Yeah.
They're just going to make as much music as they can.
I
Consistent production.
Yes, I spoke to, for those listening, I spoke to one of Amber's partners in another interview, Raymond Street, and we were discussing the different perspectives of pessimism. You can think nothing matters and therefore, nihilism, full stop, nothing matters, done. Or you be like, nothing matters, therefore we're going to create as much music, create as much art. Everything takes on a little bit of magic because it's here and then it's gone. And
Yes.
while it existed, it was magnificent. And I love that reframing of pessimism, because for most of my life, it was the first one. And it's like, how do you live under the weight of this kind of nothing matters? Isn't it so rough, But if you can be like, that means actually everything is magical. And we're just going to sing and dance while we can. Essentially.
kind of a bummer, but whatever.
But also not. It can be really thrilling.
Yeah.
Too.
And
so-
that's what I look at this house situation as.
Mhm.
Like this is going to be only here for a little while.
Yeah.
And if you see it and you experience it, it's going to be something that knocks your socks off.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be gone.
And that's gonna be gone. Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like, murals are like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like graffiti or whatever, but I love the fact that you could see something one day and then you drive by and then it's not there.
gone.
It's been
Yeah.
over. I really like that.
And theaters, a different performance every night, and it's gonna exist for that night.
Yeah.
Unless it's recorded, I guess.
Yeah.
But in general, the nature of theater is that way. It's a lightning in a bottle.
It's so ephemeral and I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I feel like it gives it more value or something.
More precious because of its rarity. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to add or discuss or go into? Make sure you let people know about.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today, Amber Raven.
Heck yeah.
And you're listening to the B-Town Breakdown. Join us next week on Friday at 6 p.m., 106.5 KQWZ LP.
Tune in for a new show every Friday at 106.5 KQWZ LP FM, South King County.